Eggland's Best has expertly crafted a first-party data strategy in partnership with Lotame. We have Matt Seubert, Director of Digital Marketing at Eggland's Best, joining us now to share insights into how they are elevating their customer experience and driving success through their use of first-party data.
Great.
Matt,
Thank you,
thanks so
Kelly.
much for joining us today.
No, thank you so much, Kelly, for having me.
To get us started, could you tell us a bit about your role and responsibilities at Eggland's Best?
Yep. So my team handles what we call here digital marketing, but for us, that's really everything from a first touch out in wide web, whether you think of social or programmatic, all the way down through our last point of sale, whether that's on a retailer's digital shelf or physically in store. And then everything in between, from the shoppable moments to the content that they bump into, to even the packaging design and some of the insights that go into the products that we produce and put on shelf. It's really a 360 view of our consumer and their journey to getting eggs into their fridge.
Great. So, in the first part of this session, I went through an overview of what first party data is and how it can be collected. Eggland's Best is set up with Lotame to collect first party data from your website. Why was implementing this capability important to your organization? And can you tell us a little bit also about how Eggland's views first party data?
Yeah, absolutely. So when we think of our business, we think of it as a get on the list strategy. Imagine your own experience buying eggs. You'll buy them 20, 25, 30 times a year. That might include sometimes adding them to an app for a delivery service, putting them on a list in the Notes app on your phone, the sticky note on your refrigerator, or just the space in the back of your head. We have to think about all the moments that lead up to that purchase. And to get in front of consumers who are more likely to trade up from a commodity or private label egg into a nutritionally superior, better tasting Eggland's Best egg. And so we think of the role that data plays for us in two parts. One is getting to know that consumer. So when we need to find a consumer who's maybe a little more likely to be a hand raiser, a little more likely to make a majority of those purchases in our brand. But then also to cultivate those consumers so that once they touch our website, touch one of our shoppable pages, sign up for our email list, we're able to keep re engaging them to drive that purchase or find consumers who look like them, who are more likely to be that kind of engager audience or folks willing to trade up with us. And so it's how, even in a category, especially folks tend not to think about kind of periphery items in the grocery store as heavy marketing or strong consumer relationships. But because we need folks to keep coming back to shelf, love the product, keep getting little nudges to find new ways to use it to engage with us, we know that that data can facilitate a stronger relationship with them.
And you mentioned in there, I think, a couple other features, along with the first party data collection to bring in those users from your site. You mentioned that you're building lookalikes out of them. So, probably using some of the analytics suite that's available within your account to learn more about those users and build those audiences. Have those use cases of lookalike building, audience analysis, targeting, all of that, have those remained consistent for you since you partnered with Lotame back in 2021, or have you kind of seen a shift in your strategy and needs over time?
Yeah, I think we've always lived in three buckets of partnership. One on the collection side, making sure that as we add new tools, we're uh, hooking in the ability to identify and engage with consumers off of them. So, for example, about 2 years ago, we added more shoppable landing pages and ways that consumers could tell us that they were in a buying mood or a list building mood. We made sure to bring that into our data set here with Lotame. We have the targeting component where that might be directly leveraging a first party audience. Let's say we're driving an engagement centric campaign. We want to find people who are kind of warm leads. Let's say when we export that audience to Meta, people who might want to participate with us or share that to their friends. Or in the case of lookalikes, kind of the third bucket being the analytics side of things, where we're understanding who those consumers are, who might have ended up on our site, on our email list, on one of our shoppable pages, and looking for Are there behaviors that seem to indicate why they might be there that we didn't have up front, or folks who look like them? And so we're always shifting between those three buckets where we want to make sure we're bringing in good data. We're using that to effectively reach back out to those consumers, and then moving that to say, how do we know them better or find folks like them who we can activate?
And with any journey, as you've kind of crafted that strategy over these past few years, there's going to be challenges along the way. What would you say are the challenges that Egglands has faced while kind of putting this strategy into place?
Yeah, challenges when we're thinking of data and digital fall into both the digital side of things and then also the offline world. Because at the end of the day, we need to map our strategies of what we do to activate consumers online to what's going on out in the real world in the grocery store or in the fridge. Uh, we have dealt with a lot of price fluctuations and availability within the brand over the last and within the category of eggs over the last several years, from COVID all the way through the current bird flu. We look at this data as important to helping to address folks who maybe can't find us for a little while, or they drop in or out of the category because of availability or pricing. That's a challenge that we confront because it changes the way we collect data, the way we understand how consumers are buying. And it's both a spot we have to work through when we're working together, but it's also a benefit of having a long run record with our consumers and how they interact with us. And when we think of the online side of it, it is being very conscious about the collection side. You can only measure, or in a lot of cases, activate on what you're observing and collecting. So making sure that all the different touch points we create are appropriately tagged, brought into the system, and can get activated on. We have to build that into our processes. And I think we've grown a lot in how we think about that. That when we add a new feature like a quiz to the website or an email upload, making sure that those work well together. So we always think of those challenges as how do we use tools like Lotame to help us answer real world challenges while also understanding how those will affect the data that we create, and then making sure that the data we're creating and collecting is as strong and actionable as we can.
So with those challenges and the plans and strategies that you've put in place to overcome them, could you tell us a little bit about the outcomes that you've seen from those efforts? So here on the screen, I've got some metrics that we can review as you're kind of talking us through that success.
Yeah, absolutely. So I think one of the things I was always amazed by when I joined the business was how engaged consumers could be with their egg brand. We have here the example of that 5 million per period transactions collected. So those are folks hitting our different properties, records being generated that help us create first party data. We think of that all the way down through if you're signed up for Eggland's Best email service. We have folks who are participating in contests, sharing images of their breakfasts, writing reviews, commenting on our recipes. All of these different touch points help create a fuller picture of our consumer. And we think of the partnership with Lotame as part and parcel to that, that we have a range of consumers from folks who pretty much buy us in store, don't think about it too much. We want to be available and well priced and deliver an egg they love, to consumers who are willing to interact with us digitally. They'll click on a property, they'll end up on a page, they'll watch a video. We want to use the data we create through Lotame and collect through Lotame to keep a record and engage with those folks because they might be a little more passive, and that's really the scale we get here. And then we have an engager audience of folks who are willing to sign up for a newsletter, post a comment, share something with their friends. We want to move folks from passive engagers to, if they're willing and happy to be engaged with their egg brand, over to that engager side. And we see Lotame as an important part of that transition so that wherever a consumer chooses to be, from relatively uninvolved to looking at some of our content to can they be nudged up into a heavier engager, can we make that more effective? And then deploy those learnings to how we talk to consumers. You'll see in the middle there, the example of all those images of folks out in the world. Some might be buying things online for their next grocery trip. They might visit egglandsbest.com. They might be interested in a cross sell item that we have. They might be Waldo in the middle of that group there. But if we match our ability of knowing the consumers who are a little more likely to be hand raisers, paired with the strength of some of the digital creative and all the great work the team here does, plus a fantastic product in our eggs, we're able to drive lifts and recall of our ads that moves people into that engager, into that hand raiser group that we're able to see that 5 million transactions, and gives us the opportunity to move them on into an engager group if they're willing to go on that journey. So we think of all of that working together, from consumer to hand raiser, all the way through to folks who want to have a long-term and engaged relationship with their egg brand.
Wonderful. And then lastly, to close us out, what advice would you give to other brands or companies that are looking to implement a first party data strategy and see positive results similar to these?
Yeah, for any business, I would always say start with an insight. For us, it started with how we talk with our consumers. In other categories, I've made folks on my teams go to stores and walk around with 40 pounds of cat litter. In ours, we think about that 30 or so transactions that folks will make in store every year and all the touch points that lead up to that. And then once you have that core insight of how a consumer interacts with your brand, it lets you start thinking about the relationships that exist off of that. They might be willing, in the case of some products, to subscribe to it and drive a lifetime value. In the case of a periphery grocery item, they might go to shelf dozens of times per year and need literally dozens of ways to use your product as a part of their lives. Or it might be a single large purchase that they're building up toward and planning toward and creating moments to engage. Think about that journey and however that consumer happens to get there in a linear, nonlinear, squiggly path, and think about how you can build on that by knowing the consumer better. I always think of our digital work as a conversation. We want to be a helpful part of that conversation. Think about your own experiences with other people. If someone knows a little bit too much about you, it can be a little weird. But if they're not listening or engaging at all, you're not going to engage back. And so we're often thinking about that balance to show up in the right place to the right consumer so that we keep that going and keep that conversation and keep that basket full of Eggland's Best.
Very good. Thank you, Matt, so much. And thank you for joining us today and sharing those insights with everyone here.
All right, great. Well, thank you so much, Matt and Kelly. That was super insightful and always great to hear directly from one of our clients. So we can continue to learn from one another. So I'm going to pause just for a moment in case there's any live questions that come through for either Kelly or Matt. We did get a couple during the spotlight, so I'm just going to go and fire these off. These are for you, Matt. So, question number one, as a brand, how did you know when it was time to put a bigger effort or push into your first party data strategy?
Yeah, so one great example of our thinking there, and I think it's helpful for a lot of brands to start here. We looked at a couple of different sources. I'll look at one as from our panel set that around 20% of our consumers, and just to take like an omni-channel approach, so consumers picking up or getting delivery of groceries, around 20% of our consumers drive around half of our retail sales. So we knew that a relationship with those consumers was incredibly valuable. We also continued to see a world that was getting a little more turbulent in terms of egg prices and probably in other ways too, but how folks would relate to the category to keep that kind of most engaged slice engaged, we'd need to keep talking with them, and ideally, we'd create more of them. So when you think of your business, it's often thinking about, are there differences between types of consumers and how they engage with you, and then do you start having the granularity of data to be able to activate on that? And that was the big driver for us. We knew we had a North Star of buyers who would buy, consume more, love the product. And now that we were getting more data on their purchase behavior, on their interests. We looked at that as an opportunity to activate on it.
Great, thank you. And our last question, also for you, Matt. Are you able to talk about what are your goals for Eggland's Best in 2025 as it relates to your first party data strategy?
Yeah, we really are this year focused on a strategy of brand love. We know that it's been a challenging year for egg availability and pricing. And so we've continued to add new facets to what we do digitally. We've upgraded our CRM, we've added new quizzes and engagement on our website. We're updating a couple thousand recipes that we host. We think about those as the starting points of that conversation, and then they're the handoffs that drive into our data strategy. So as we have a strong foundation of engagement and the right toolkit to talk with our consumers this year and well beyond from that foundation, we'll use tools like Lotame to help keep that conversation going and hopefully keep staying in those baskets.
Great, I love it. Well, as always, we're here to help. If anybody has any additional follow-up questions, you can always reach out to our support team via the link on lotamecentral.com or directly to your client success manager. And we will have the recording available from today's session shortly. You'll see it in the knowledge base, and we'll also share it over email. So thank you again for taking the time to join us today. Thank you so much, Matt and Kelly. This was great. We greatly appreciate it. And we look forward to hopefully seeing you at a future upskill session soon. So thanks so much, everyone, and have a great day.
Thank you all so much.